Hi, this is Scott. Kilos here, 6 Delta Alpha Yankee, also WRTI 407, because I am going to be talking about some GMRS stuff today. What I want to talk about today, this is a little bit of a different take on radio review. This is, I'm not going to be reviewing the radio I'm going to be talking about today per se, because I've already done a comprehensive review on the radio, but this is actually a long-term follow-up. I talked about this in the last video that I did, and I mentioned that I wanted to come back and mention the Ailunce HA1 Golf, and I've been wanting to do this for a while now. There's a couple of reasons. One of them is a teaser for something really cool that's coming up in the next few days. But today what I really want to talk about is why this radio maybe deserves a second look from you guys out there. If you haven't seen the review video that I've done on this radio, this is a radio you need to pay attention to, because this is actually something pretty freaking cool. And it sort of surprised me. It kind of slid in. It's real stealth, and it managed to work its way into my rotation in the most happy way possible. So the way things work for me, as far as the radios that I bring in for review and what I do with them afterwards, is often like this. I'll get a radio in, and a lot of radios I've reviewed, I find them to be perfectly acceptable on some level, and I'll list the high points and the low points of the radio. And many times, more times than not, the radio will just go up on the shelf again, and it doesn't get pulled down unless I need it for a specific topic I'm covering, or I need it for pouch fitment pictures or something of that nature. But oftentimes the radios just go up on the shelf and they never get used again, because I don't really find them any more compelling than the radios that I'm currently using, or I'm using radios that just have better feature sets that appeal to me. So why would I want to use one of those other radios? Just kind of is what it is. And where I tend to determine for myself how good I think a radio is doesn't really have anything to do with an objective rating or comparison from one radio to another. It's just whatever radios happen to catch my interest, and for whatever reason I find them compelling. And how this process goes about is whenever I'm traveling around, the county with my wife, going family stuff or whatever, she likes to take her car. She doesn't like my dirty old truck, so we end up taking her car, and it doesn't have a radio system in it. So I'll take some kind of HT, and as often at the last minute, I'll grab. Oftentimes it's a radio that I might be working with prior to a review. But if I'm in between reviews, it'll just be whatever radio I find interesting at the moment. Now, in almost every case, it's going to be a radio that has some kind of GMRS capability, because if I need to reach out in an emergency over a handheld radio, GMRS is the best option in the area that I live, because the amateur radio service repeaters are dead as a doornail. The only time they activate and have any kind of activity on them is when they're doing some kind of a net. During the day, you call out on a 2-meter, 70-centimeter amateur radio repeater around here, you're going to get nobody. But the GMRS world is different. A lot of dudes have the radios on, and if you need help, there's somebody out there on the other end, or you're more likely to have somebody out there on the other end. So I'll oftentimes grab a GMRS radio or a ham radio that has GMRS capability. What I started noticing after I reviewed the HA1 Golf is I started noticing that more often than not, I was grabbing one of these. Now, usually it's an Ocean KG935 Golf or my KG-S88 Golf, but I found myself starting to grab this little thing. And I didn't really know why. It just, I've got a stack of radios there on the table, and this is the one that just seemed to fall to hand. So I started paying attention to why that was, sort of leaning into it. And I found myself I started fiddling with this thing, getting more interested in it, and, adding more channel capability to it, and learning the ins and outs of the front panel and the menu and all that. And this has now become one of my favorite little radios. And if I had to really put a finger on exactly why that is, the first thing is it has almost the complete feature set that I tend to favor. You've got your separate volume and channel control knob at the top of the radio, so you can change the channels from here. That's something I find very useful. It does not have a flashlight. It has an antenna with the proper SMA connection, where the center conductor pin is on the antenna instead of the radio side. It's IP67. It has an IP67 speaker mic connection. It's rugged, durable. It's a very effective radio. Signal reports are excellent. It puts out exactly, well, it puts out the correct amount of output wattage. How about that? Receive capability is very, very good. The speaker is massively loud. This is a very, very loud radio, so it's easy to hear when you're riding around in a car. The menu system is intuitive. It's easy to use. It's real simple to drive channels into this thing via the front panel and make adjustments to the radio. You can name channels when you program frequencies and save them into menu. Everything I want in a radio is represented by this thing, and it's a $43 radio. About the only thing that I found that I didn't like was I didn't like the black text on blue background that this thing has. That's a display thing and it's a cosmetic thing. I can still read it. It's just not my preference. I didn't like the unlock sequence on this because it's primarily a GMRS radio. It departs from a lot of GMRS radios in that you can use this in the amateur radio service, but it's cumbersome in how you do it. You have to download a piece of software. You have to put this thing in service mode. And then afterwards, every time you want to use this with the amateur radio service, you have to do an unlock sequence with the 6-digit code every single time. So if you turn the radio off, it resets back into GMRS only. And to use amateur radio service, you have to put that code in again every single time you turn the radio on and off. So I found that a little cumbersome and rinky-dink. I didn't care for that. But otherwise, just as a straight up GMRS radio, this thing is freaking excellent. And it's, you know, I love my Ocean GMRS radios, but boy, does this thing give them a run for their money. It's every bit as good as my Ocean GMRS radios, and that's saying something. You know, the display isn't as nice as something like a KG935 Golf. You know, it doesn't have that dark display with the cool color schemes and all that. But it's also a third of the price. So I can't really complain too much about that. And in terms of ruggedness and durability, this thing has an awesome feel. It's sturdy. It's not cheap or flimsy in any way, shape, or form. It's excellent. So that's why I think this really does need a second look. But more importantly is this. The whole time I've been using this thing, I wished and wondered why there was not an amateur radio variant of this. Why is there not one for the amateur radio service? Well, I'm pleased to report, if you look here, notice the difference in the way Ailunce is spelled at the top of this radio right here. And if you turn the radios on, I'll see if I can get this to actually work. Let me set this up here so I turn them both the same way at the same time. You'll notice a little bit of a different display, hopefully, on each of the radios. Yeah, hopefully that came on. You'll also notice the radio in my right hand has white text on blue background, and this one has black text on blue background. Well, this is the Ailunce HA1UV. This is the amateur radio version of the HA1 Golf. It is, let me turn them off here. This is kind of cumbersome. Let's go back to holding them in the correct hand here. And the only way, literally, to tell them apart is the different font on Ailunce right there. They are otherwise identical visually. When you turn them on, they are a little bit different. There are some little telltale signs that you're dealing with one versus the other. The splash screen on opening is a little different. The menu on this one has red accent highlight. On this one, it has blue accent highlight. But I'm going to have the full review on this one out in the next few days. Redivus has asked me to hold for a couple of days so that it releases kind of with the rest of them out there. But I can tell you this thing does everything the HA1 Golf does. It is unlockable in the permanent sense. So all you need to do is just hold down the PTT, the number 8 key, and turn the radio on, and it'll go full expanded transmit, and it'll stay that way. So you can do amateur radio service and GMRS with this radio. Has all the rest of the same features in terms of being IP67 and all the rest of the layout. Again, identical to the HA1 Golf. Same channel count. The menu is pretty much the same. There's some little textual differences between the two menus, but they operate about the same way. This thing is going to be a game changer. This is probably going to go down as my #1 recommended economy radio moving forward. And the fact that you can get into an MCOM capable radio at the price level this thing is going to hit at, and I'm going to hold on quoting the price level until I do the review on this. This is something truly interesting and special. They managed to coalesce pretty much all of the features that I myself happen to find very, very useful. And that I find them useful doesn't necessarily mean you have to emulate me, but I find them useful for a reason that you may also find them useful. But all of those features that I find useful are present in this. Again, at a very excellent price. Of course, it's still analog. It's not DMR or anything like that. So, you know, radios for that purpose, you need to look in a different direction. But getting back to the true utter usefulness of this radio, this thing is going to be very, very interesting. So I'm going to have the review out on this, like I said, in a couple of days. So about the same time everyone else is releasing their reviews, I'll have mine out. And yes, I did get this from Retevis. I did finally manage to connect with someone at Retevis that actually has their act together, and I have consequently a completely different viewpoint in terms of the marketing operation at Retevis. They have learned their lesson from the past few people that were doing radio review coordination, and they got a guy in there that actually knows what he's doing, and he does one hell of a job. So I look forward to presenting that later in the week. But getting back to the HA1 Golf for you guys in the GMRS radio market, again, take a look at the review on this radio. It's gonna end up being very similar to what I'm going to be doing with this one here. But I think you'll like what you see. And if you are in the market for a GMRS radio and you don't want to go the ocean price point, this definitely deserves a look. So with that, I've talked long enough. I thank you for watching and or listening. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee from Visalia, California. Have a wonderful day.